Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. And I'm coming to you live again, straight from the US of A. And currently, with weather updates, we are experiencing a snowstorm. And no, it's not anything crazy, but here in Tennessee, it is definitely white outside. And I just want to confirm that the rumors are true, that every time I travel during the winter time to Italy or back to the US, I bring a storm with me. And I don't know, like, it's a weird coincidence. And today I have an exciting video for you guys. I am answering one of your questions. I did see one of my comments on my previous video that I was asked to talk about my experience with being married to an Italian or someone who speaks a different language than I do. Because obviously Italian is not my madrelingua. It is definitely not my mother tongue. And so it is something that I had to learn. And I was asked to share my experience and any difficulties that I had when in that process. So yeah, and definitely if you have any other questions, guys, feel free to leave a comment below. I will answer them. I will make a video just for you. Now, just a disclaimer, I am not a language guru, but I can give you some tips and tricks that have helped me in the process, and some people that I've watched or some tools that I've used to help me in perfecting my Italian language. And so I'm gonna break this down for you and how learning Italian happened for me, especially coming from living in Japan, grew up in Japan, where the first thing that I knew when coming to Italy, I spoke no Italian, by the way, when I first moved to Italy. All I knew was like ciao, and that was it. And I obviously at this point in time knew more Japanese than I did Italian, which was zero help to me in the situation. Knowing enough Spanish as like a background language for me as well, that I had picked up over the years, was helpful in helping me to decipher a lot of what was going on in the conversations, and using that, actually learning Spanish to help me learn Italian, which kind of sounds weird, like why wouldn't you just go straight for Italian, right? But through learning the grammar and like how it functions in Spanish, like learning that and using that to break down Italian language was super helpful. And even though they're not exactly the same, they're both Latin languages, so they're more like cousins than sisters, you know what I mean? The structure of Italian language and grammar made sense to me. I was also super fortunate to have a lot of opportunities while I was in high school to learn Italian because, guys, I was a jazz performer in high school, and no, we weren't that great. But it was a lot of fun, and I had a lot of really cool opportunities to go to the Italian high school. Before the performances, we would go through different Italian classes, like through the school, like as if we were a regular student. And through that, I was like, they were learning English from me and I was learning Italian from them. And then obviously living in Italy, it's a lot harder to not pick up something, because I feel like people here just are, again, very passionate about their language, very passionate about their traditions. And so you become Italian after living here for so long, because it's just, you're so embedded in the culture. I don't know another way to say that. And I also have a video talking about that on my channel as well, about the ways that Italy has changed me. And I definitely, if you guys are interested, I can make another video talking about some other ways in which Italy has changed me. For the better, maybe for the worse, I don't know, we'll decide. Plus, a good friend of my mother's is Italian, so it's her madrelingua, obviously, and she was very helpful in, you know, teaching us and really just giving that part of the immersion, but also with the grammar aspect of it. So like that's really important, because you can hear it all day long, but knowing the actual grammar rules is really helpful to being able to move forward in the process. And I'll get more into that like in a little bit. So when talking about immersion, once I met Giulio, okay, let me back up. When I met Giulio's English was not super strong. He learned it in school, and he listened to music and he watched movies and stuff like that, and he, like, you know, tried to utilize it when he was going out and about, because Vicenza, you have a lot of Americans around, obviously. Then when we started dating is when, like, he obviously was using it more, because my Italian was not strong or great, really. And that was when things really started to change once our relationship got a little bit more serious. So when I started spending the night at his family's house or spending weekends with them, or I was just there a lot, okay, obviously because we were in a relationship, or still are. And so his mom mostly was super determined in teaching me to speak Italian. And it was at that point that I also realized we were never going to speak English together. And I've accepted that. And it's still that way today. I mean, she understands some things in English, but the only response I ever get is in Italian. So it's never going to change, and I'm okay with that. Whenever I would have dinner or lunch or breakfast with them, sis pulled out a translator and was like, we're gonna do this. And she would help translate things for me. And even like with cooking in the kitchen, which I feel like is one of the best ways to learn a language, is through food. That to me was very helpful. Like when it came to her teaching me how to cook different things or how to like what to call different utensils, that was kind of like my baby steps into everything. And then we would sit, obviously because they're Italian, we would sit and have dinner, no TV really, and just sit and talk to each other about our day. And they would really try to break things down for me, conversation wise, to get me to understand it. And then every once in a while I'll throw in some dialect words, so that way I'm learning like 2 languages at once. You know, it's like a combo meal. From there, again, like it was the food part of the language, and then obviously having conversation. And then once we escalated to a part where I was able to like maintain a conversation, like a simple one, we were going out with like friends of the family and meeting other relatives. And that's where I really learned a little bit more dialect and more different ways of saying things more creatively that are less mechanical. Because I feel like when we're learning a language, we often learn like most formal versions of that language and things that sound very mechanical. And through immersing yourself with Italian friends and like strangers and things like that, it really changes the way you're able to smooth through conversation, because you're learning slang and other types of colloquials that you normally wouldn't get through like a standard program. Another thing that I did when learning Italian and trying to really be determined in like perfecting certain like vocal sounds and like being able to wrap up and like thicken my conversation is I use Duolingo, and I use like different YouTubers. Like I was watching, even now, like Learn Italian with Lucrezia. I watch her videos, and I have like different podcasts I listen to. Like there was one I was listening to pretty consistently, which was called Coffee Break Italian. So all these things I was adding in to kind of beef up my structure and things like that, and giving me some of that like grammar repetition and practice. Obviously using grammar books, which I'm in the process of getting a new grammar book. You constantly need to be practicing, especially when you're not in the environment. Like right now, I'm in the States. It's not often that I'm going to be using Italian, so I have to be practicing it more regularly. And that also comes with listening to music and watching movies. And one thing that Juliet would do for me is that he would give me different movies and TV shows to watch. And then what I started off doing is I would have it in Italian, and then I would have my English subtitles to the bottom. But once I got comfortable with that is when I started moving away from having English subtitles to having Italian subtitles. And then once I got even more comfortable is when you take away the subtitles all completely and you're just watching it in its entirety. Another thing you can do when you come across a word or phrase that's unfamiliar to you, taking notes, looking it up, repeating it, and different ways in which how to use it. And my favorite thing about doing that is that once I have educated myself on like a phrase or a word that was used that I'm unfamiliar with, and I'll like keep finding different ways to use it. And then finally, when the moment comes that I'm talking to an Italian native and I can finally use that word, oh my goodness, it's like fireworks go off. It's so exciting for me. Okay, this may seem a little weird. I know I normally say to people like don't talk to strangers, but when I'm in Italy, I will bring up conversations with strangers, like at a coffee shop or at a store, anywhere. I may like strike up a conversation about something random, you know, with a stranger. It can get kind of mechanical and humdrum when you're only talking to waiters or cashiers or someone who's assisting you with doing a task. You don't always go and use more creative language necessarily. You need to have more opportunities to just strike up conversation and talk about the weather, talk about a plant, I don't know, like something random that with words that you have been studying and you want to put them to use. I think it can be fun as long as you're being safe, and it can help you again like strengthen your language skills. But for all of you watching, I'm pretty sure the big question is, Cheyenne, like, are you fluent yet? And the answer is no, I don't feel that I am. It's a constant learning process, no matter what language you're learning or what language you're trying to speak. So now that we have gotten through like the learning process, what were some of the challenges? when it came to communicating with his family, even now to this day, because there are certain things that like in the English language that we have that just don't exist in Italian language and vice versa. So for example, when I would say fosse un serpente mi avrebbe morso, it doesn't, I mean, yes, it translates, but it doesn't really translate as clearly or as commonly because it's not something that Italian people say. It's something that like you hear more in the US. Whenever I would say that, they would just look at me like, what is wrong with her? Like, why is she talking about snakes biting her? It's such a weird thing to say. And there are some things that in Italian does not translate into English. You know, there are certain phrases that are cultural or that are regional. And there's also some things that, okay, so it's very important to know the difference between sedere and culo. I made this mistake many times for probably about a year long, where I was saying this to his mom. She would look at me like kind of strange, like she wasn't quite sure how to respond, and she would always pause, and I was like, am I saying this wrong? Like something happening? And it would be also in front of my husband, and he wouldn't say anything. He would just be like, you know, like he would just allow me to say these things, and it was a lot of words that I would say incorrectly consistently. Like I would not pronounce it correctly because there is a movement with your tongue and your mouth structure that you have to, you know, get down clearly when you're speaking Italian or any other language for that matter. There is like different ways in which the mouth is held or the tongue is held, all that jazz. And sometimes it can make words sound completely different than like what you intended them to say. That was happening to me more often than not. They will allow you to get away saying things that just are not correct. And because they may say, oh, but you know, I knew what you meant, or oh, my husband would always say, you sounded so cute when you said it that way, so I just allowed you to say it. No, you're doing me a disservice. I will say though, however, now that I'm on the way to applying for my Italian citizenship, my husband is a lot more serious about what I say in Italian and correcting me on my verbiage and things like that. One other part about learning a language though is you do pick up accents. So actually one year when I went to Bolsena, I went there for the famous progression that they have. So I was translating for my mom about something else that she wanted to buy, right? And so I'm talking to the lady that works there, and she stops me like mid conversation and asked me like, dove sei? Like, where are you from? I said, well, you know, I'm American, but I live here in Italy, and my husband is from Vicenza, and so that's actually how I learned to speak Italian. And she was like, oh, I can tell, because when you speak, you have a Veneto accent, and you know, they pronounce things a little bit differently because, you know, I am Milanese and we pronounce things correctly because our accent is the correct accent. I was taken back because I was so offended that she was attacking, you know, my accent, let alone my husband's accent, and like all of Veneto basically. And Milan is not even that far from Vicenza. It's like 2 hours by car, okay? Anyway, it was a really strange situation. I don't know if it's happened to any of you guys out there who are learning languages. If you've been confronted abruptly like that, definitely let me know in the comment down below. It's a weird situation when it happens, and honestly, it's not that deep. It's not that deep. What's something that was really frustrating for me when trying to speak with his family and like being in the beginning parts, even the middle parts of like learning Italian, was whenever they would ask me things like serious topics, like strong topics, especially if it related to like American culture or American politics, and they would ask me things and expect me to answer. That was so tough for me. And there was one moment where I couldn't like fully express myself as far as intelligently. And so I would actually go and study these topics, like as far as like translating it into Italian, so the next time that I had a lunch date or a dinner date, I was ready. I wanted to make sure like my point of view, my, you know, opinion on the topic was made strongly, and the facts that I had to back it up were made strongly in their language so they could understand it, so they knew like that I knew things. Like, you want to be able to show them the full scope of your personality and who you are, being able to show them like, that I'm a well-rounded person. That was a pretty big pivotal part of like the learning process for me. Well, thank you guys for joining me today, and definitely subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Definitely leave a comment if you want to see more videos like this. And oh, don't forget to ring that bell so the next time I post a video, you'll be the first to know. Like, isn't that amazing? I think so. I think so. Well, I look forward to you guys joining me on the next one. Ciao for now.